Hello, it's Scott Eckert here for virtual FarmerCon 2021, FarmerCon 16. And today I'm going to read an excerpt from the forthcoming book, The Monster on Hold, by Philip Jose Farmer and completed by me. I feel very fortunate to have been authorized to finish this work that Phil started. It's a great honor. And it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today to read from it. Before I do that, I am going to actually read some interview questions that were sent to me by Rias Nuninga, who passed away earlier this year before I had a chance to provide written answers back to his interview questions. For those of you who are not familiar with Rias, he was the webmaster of philipjosefarmer.com, the international Philip Jose Farmer bibliography. So if you go to that site, philipjosefarmer.com, it's a wealth of information. It's a great resource of all of the publication history of Phil's books, so many editions and so many international editions. It was a great loss for the farmer community. And we all very much regret and are saddened that he cannot join us this year for a virtual FarmerCon. I thought I would read his questions to me and quickly answer them before going into my own reading from the book. Hello, Wynn. Thank you for the interview. First, can you introduce yourself a bit? I think I'll skip that part. I think everyone attending FarmerCon pretty much knows what my background is with Phil and the Wildman family, Farmer File, and working on writing books in his worlds and from his manuscripts. Why were you inspired to write and finish this novel, The Monster on Hold? Does your lifelong obsession with the Wildman universe play a role? Absolutely. The Nine universe is sort of that dark mirror universe of the Wildman universe. And not only am I a Wildman fan, but have always been a huge Doc Savage and Tarzan fan. So the opportunity to sort of play with the toys for Phil's analogs or Phil's pastiches, Doc Caliban and Lord Grunneth was, just something that I couldn't pass up. And I had a great deal of fun writing the book and sort of writing my own pastiche Doc novel. The novel is based on a chapter, The Monster on Hold, that Philip Jose Farmer had written and published in 1983. What other original material did you have to start with? It's a great question. So World Fantasy Convention 1983, Phil presented an outline, sketchy in the beginning and then getting a little bit more tight as it approached the chapter, and then a chapter, as Rias noted. We found in Phil's files 3 other chapters that did not seem to be necessarily directly connected or written at the exact same time, but nonetheless were very pertinent to the book and were definitely a Doc pastiche and having to do with sort of the Doc versus Cthulhu theme, if you will. Did something with it, came back to it later, worked on it at different times, but clearly related. And then we have, and those are reproduced, by the way, in the bonus materials of the book. Also reproduced are 14 pages of his notes, both typewritten and handwritten, all of which provided insight to some degree or another on aspects of the book. So Phil is really throughout the book, from the outline, from the opening, and how it opens, and all throughout. That's my hope anyway, that Phil is throughout it, and that was what the goal was. Was there an outline, or did you have to make it up from scratch? I think I've already answered that question. I definitely followed his outline. Not to say that there is not some Scott Eckert in there too. There is. But overall, the structure of the novel and the outcome is Phil's. Why change the name of the series from Lord Grunneth / Doc Caliban to Secrets of the Nine? So this goes back to when I was working with Titan on many of the Farmer reissues in the early 2010s, reissuing A Feast Unknown, Lord of the Trees, The Mad Goblin, and many others. To be fair, the series never did have a formal name. I mean, Lord Grunneth Doc Caliban series was not the formal name. There was no formal name. And from a marketing perspective, we felt that it would be advantageous to give the series a formal name. And came up with Secrets of the Nine, and we're carrying that forward with the Meteor House books that are coming out. Frank Schildener's novella, It's Always Darkest, and then The Monster on Hold. So sort of that series heading. Next question from Rias is, with the start of this novel, 4 of the 9 are already dead: Zauzaz, Ubeniga, Jinfan, and Iwaldi. That occurred in the 3 previous novels. So still living members are Anana, Tilatok, Ing, Yeshua, and Shanbin. Can you tell us something more about the 9? What is their goal? Or how can they survive 20,000 to 30,000 years without getting bored? I actually explore that a little bit in the book. In my perspective, I don't think you could live that long without maybe going a little bit insane. You certainly would not be the same person, I think, that you started out as in maybe your initial lifetimes, first couple of 100 years. Once you have 10,000 years go by, who knows how many memories your brain can really store with deep accuracy. And I think the question comes up, who are you? And are you human? Are you even a human being anymore? So we do explore that in the book. Is The Monster on Hold written as a standalone novel, or does one have to have had the 3 previous novels, which are A Feast Unknown, Lord of the Trees, and The Mad Goblin, to fully understand the context? So I wrote it to be a standalone, and we included a what has gone before, a couple of pages of that to bring the reader up to speed. And it is my hope that it can be read as a standalone novel without having to have read the 3 previous books. And some of the beta readers have indicated that that is the case, that they haven't read the original 3 in a while. They dove right in to beta reading The Monster on Hold, and they understood completely what was going on. That said, if you're a Farmer fan, a deep Farmer fan, and you've been looking forward to this book forever, why wouldn't you read the first 3 again before jumping into Monster on Hold? And frankly, also read Frank's novella, It's Always Darkest, which takes place after The Mad Goblin, but before The Monster on Hold. Okay. Are both characters, Lord Grunneth and Doc Caliban, protagonists in the novel? No, this is a Doc Caliban-centered book. However, there were some dangling plot lines regarding Lord Grunneth, and those are certainly touched upon in the book. And Lord Grunneth does get at least a name check. Hopefully that's not a spoiler. But it's not a Lord Grunneth-centered book. Maybe we'll see another book centering around Lord Grunneth in the future. We'll see. And then the earliest published chapter reads a bit like a Cthulhu story. Yeah, absolutely. Will this be the case with the complete novel? Yes. Can you tell us something of what to expect? No, it's very hard to discuss it without getting straight into spoilers. It was originally sort of pitched or characterized as Doc Savage versus Cthulhu. Obviously, it's not Doc Savage. This is not a Doc Savage book. This is Doc Caliban, who is Phil's pastiche Doc. And it is also not technically Cthulhu mythos. The entity is a Lovecraftian type of entity, inspired by the Lovecraftian mythos, the Cthulhu mythos, but it is not straight out of the Lovecraft mythology. It takes aspects of different pieces of that mythology. Will you write more in the Secrets of the Nine series? I hope so. I can probably say, based on a couple of questions ago, it could be set up for that. I don't want to drop any spoilers. I'd love to. Being completely transparent, we do not have any more material from Phil in the Secrets of the Nine world. that we know of right now. And so if I were to carry it on, it would be something based on my extrapolations of where he was going, but not based on any prose or outline from him. Lastly, do you have any future plans to expand the Pat Wildman series? I loved both Evil in Pemberley House and The Scarlet Jaguar and would like to read more. Thank you, Rias. Thank you. And I wish that that had come to pass for you. Yes, I will be writing more in the Pat Wildman series. And thank you again. Rias then goes on to mention my recent background, having done a book from Moonstone, Hunt the Avenger, which is a novella of 5 interconnected stories that form, one narrative about the pulp hero, the Avenger from the 1940s. And I would say that some of the antagonists in that book are very pertinent to the Monster on Hold. But again, you don't have to have read Hunt the Avenger at all to understand the Monster on Hold. And then Rias also pointed out that I recently had a new authorized novel in the new Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe series, Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar, which came out in 2020. And that was a big thrill, just like writing Monster on Hold has been. Okay, and then Rias thanks me for the interview, and I thank Rias. And, okay. So I'm going to get into the reading now, and I'm going to keep it, probably keep it brief. I wanted to talk about the contents of the Monster on Hold book coming out from Meteor House. They put together a great package, limited edition hardcover, wraparound cover art by Mark Wheatley, trade soft cover art by Douglas Klauba. Doug has done the signature page design for the limited edition hardcover and provided a headshot of Doc Caliban for interior art. And then Mark Wheatley has provided, in terms of interior art, another headshot of Doc, as well as 3 illustrations which are presented as sort of chapter breaks, although they're not really chapters, more like 3 parts. It's a 3-part novel. And each of these is segmented by a great piece of art by Mark Wheatley. We have an introduction, or a foreword really, by Chuck Welch, Doc Savage expert and Doc Savage fan extraordinaire, editor of the Bronze Gazette. We have a little bit of what has gone before, which is lifted straight from Phil's 1983 World Fantasy presentation. Then we have the novel itself. Then we have, in the bonus materials, we have a novelette that I wrote called The Wild Huntsman, which provides some background material, but it is not necessary to read the book. It's sort of a background adventure, if you will. We have 14 pages of scans and notes and letters from Phil's files, all of which are in some way pertinent or impacted the writing of the book. We have his original prose and outline, and again, I've discussed that in answering Rias's questions, what that's composed of. And then we have an essay by me and a chronology of the 9 universe by me, and then with some closing remarks from me and about the authors. So with that said, I'm going to read Phil's What Has Gone Before from the 1983 World Fantasy Convention program. The Monster on Hold. Prior working titles are The Unspeakable Threshold, Some Unspeakable Dweller, The Leaser of Two Evils, and Down to Earth Center. Is a Doc Caliban novel, and the latest in the series, beginning with A Feast Unknown and continued in Lord of the Trees and the Mad Goblin. Feast started in East Africa and is told in first person by John Clonby, Viscount Grunneth, pronounced Grunneth, an Englishman raised by a subhuman species, a variant of Australopithecus in West Africa. Grunneth, while still a youth, became one of the high echelon agents of the Council of Nine. The Nine are the secret rulers of Earth, most of whom were born circa 30,000 to 20,000 BC, though they looked as if their age is only 100. The 9 have considerably slowed their aging with a longevity elixir, which they share with certain agents who have earned it. Grunneth is one of the very few so privileged. Though 81 in 1969, he looks and feels like a 25-year-old man. In A Feast Unknown, Grunneth is suffering unforeseen side effects of the elixir. These make it impossible for him to get an erection unless, or to avoid one if, violence is involved. He finds this out when he is attacked by Jomo Kenyatta's forces. Then he discovers that an American agent for the 9 is out to kill him. Doc Caliban believes, wrongly, that Grunneth has killed Caliban's cousin, Patricia Wild, also an agent of the 9. Caliban is suffering from the same side effects of the elixir. Just as the two have what should be a final confrontation, they are summoned to a meeting of the 9 in a subterranean area in East Africa. The oldest man of the council, Zawzaz, has died, and Caliban and Grunneth are the top 2 candidates to replace him. One must kill the other to get a seat on the council. In the end of A Feast Unknown, after many adventures, the 2 almost kill each other, but then they unite to fight against the 9. In Lord of the Trees, Grunneth manages to kill Mubaniga, the Proto-Bantu member of the 9. In The Mad Goblin, Jinfan, a Proto-Mongolian member, and Iwaldi, an ancient Germanic member, are killed during a battle at Stonehenge. 4 of the 9 are dead, leaving as head of the council Anana, the withered hag born about 30,000 years ago in the area which would become Sumeria. Other living members are Tillatok, an ancient Amerindian, Ing, the patronymic leader of the early English tribes when they were living in Denmark, Yeshua, a Hebrew born circa 3 BC, and Shambim, a Proto-Mongolian. The 3 novels above took place in the late 1960s. All right, so then we go into the very opening of The Monster on Hold, Part 1, Some Unspeakable Dweller, 1977. And if you've read the World Fantasy Con booklet, you know that the next lines that Phil had in there from where I stopped reading was that Doc Caliban is attacking Tillatok's fortress somewhere in northern Canada. That's the outline, and that's exactly where the book starts. The things flapped their leathery wings all around Doc Caliban's head, pointed beaks packed with cutting teeth snapping at his exposed bronze cheeks, talons clawing and ripping the upper sleeves of his parka. One cabled hand shot out and caught one of the things by the neck. He squeezed and wrung the thing back and forth, finally snapping its scaly neck as one of its companions repeatedly pecked its sharp beak at his reinforced protective eyewear, seeking the moist, gold-flecked eye flesh behind it. Caliban swept the thing away, kicked at another that clawed at the thighs of his thick, winter-weight trousers, and attempted to pull the flame-throwing gun from the clasped holster at his hip, while the creatures whirled and flapped around his face, constantly harrying him. "Doc, Doc," came a call far behind him in the ice-encrusted tunnel. "Stay back, brothers." Caliban, the flame gun loosed, squeezed the trigger, and a jet of hot blue flame shot out at the nearest predator, vaporizing it. Another clamped its hellish jaws about Caliban's lower left arm, tearing his jacket and puncturing bronze flesh. The ice-packed ground was stained with crimson as blood pumped out of the gaping wound. Doc's right fist clamped about the thing's neck and tore it from his left arm, shredding more of his flesh and muscle in the process. He flung the creature hard against the ice-walled tunnel, and its skull made a sickening crunch at the impact. The 3 remaining flew about Caliban, more warily now than that their numbers had been halved. "Doc, what is it?" The deep grunting voice of Pancho Van Vilar echoed weirdly through the ice tunnel. Some kind of pterosaurs, Caliban replied. His voice was calm and even, evoking the gentle yet powerful strains of a fine cello. Wingspan about 3 feet, talons, jaws lined with needle-like teeth, off-white, scaly hides. 3 left, they're holding off further attack at the moment. Pterosaurs? The voice was that of Trish Wild, Doc's cousin. So now the 9 are dabbling in reviving long-lost species? The pterosaurs flew upward and disappeared into the Stygian heights of the frozen tunnel. Not only that, Caliban said, but also clearly experimenting with bioengineering. These are acclimated to a subarctic climate. Extraordinary. Doc, Barney Banks called, can we come forward? Slowly, and with your flamethrowers drawn and primed. There may be more of them. We weren't born yesterday, Doc. This was another's feminine voice, not Trish. Their spike-soled boots echoed up the icy passageway, and this resulted in an odd rustling in the darkness in front of and above Caliban. He called out sharply to his crew behind him, "Stop!" The group's forward motion halted and the rustling ceased. Caliban commanded, "Forward," and again in response to his crew's footfalls, there came the ominous rustling above. Barney, Trish, Poncho, and Barbara Villiers, the latest addition to Caliban's crew, crept up behind him. All were dressed in cold weather gear, hooded parkas, thick gloves, and heavy snow pants. Poncho was 6 feet tall with unnaturally long arms and equally unnaturally short legs. Small eyes squinted out from under a slanting forehead and massive brow ridge and hung like tiny obsidian dots above the thrusting jaw and receding chin. He was of that particular type of sociable-looking homely that brought women out of the woodwork, to the constant dismay of his classically handsome buddy, Barney. Barney was equally tall, trim but not skinny, and perfectly proportioned. His nose was straight and symmetrical, as were his mouth, dark eyes, and eyebrows. His black hair was flawlessly swept back. Trish Wild was a knockout, bronze of skin tone and strongly resembling her cousin. She was curvy in all the right places, 6 feet tall, and, with wavy bronze hair, perhaps a shade darker than that of Doc Caliban, was the perfect embodiment of the ultimate in feminine pulchritude. Barbara Villiers, as Poncho had once indiscreetly remarked, gave Trish a run for her money in the beauty and brains department. Her hair was deep red, her skin was fresh and clear, and her violet eyes were big and wide. Her figure, like Trish's, was splendid. Caliban, a bronze Hercules, raised a forefinger to his lips and motioned upward with his eyes. These were gray-green and curiously speckled with bright gold or yellow, and were startling to those who met him for the first time. The 5 slowly turned their gaze away from the 6'7" giant and towards the ceiling, directing their flashlights upward. The circular tunnel opened in front of them into an ice cavern, perhaps 25 feet high. Perched and hanging upside down from the frost-encrusted roof of the cave, as if they were giant whitish bats, were hundreds of the pterosaurs, eyes glinting balefully in the beams of battery-driven light thrown by the party's torches. "Lights out," Doc breathed. Each member of his group complied, and they crouched in darkness and silence. Then Barney whispered, "Doc, I saw a gap. I think the continuation of this tunnel at the far end of that hollow. Do you see any other exits?" "No, Barney, you're correct," Caliban said. "The only way out is through the cavern, past and under the pterosaurs. Surely they won't let us pass unhindered." Caliban partially unzipped his parka and took from a vest pocket underneath 3 small glass blisters, which in turn he tucked into 3 metal spheres that evoked smooth grenades. He stepped forward away from the others and tossed each sphere one at a time at the roof of the cavern. As each metal ball left Doc's grasp, they heard a mild whirring which faded as each sphere neared the ceiling, followed by 3 clunks of each embedding in the frost above. "Hold your breath. 1 minute." Poncho, Barney, Trish, and Barbara did as Doc instructed. After the passage of more than 60 seconds, the party did not hear the hoped-for thunking of unconscious pterosaur bodies hitting the ground. The bronze-skinned man flicked on his torch. Reptilian eyes gazed back at them unblinkingly. Knockout gas didn't work. Any other ideas? Barbara asked. Only one, Caliban said. Make a run for it, full bore, for the opposite end, flamethrower guns on full and aimed for the roof. He paused. Anyone who considers this too foolhardy of a move is welcome to go back and regroup the camp. No questions asked. No way, Doc, Pancho boomed and was promptly kicked in the shin by Barney. Keep it down, you excuse for a baboon. Abashed, Pancho grimaced, gray gristle eyes disappearing under the massive brow ridge of bone above them, and didn't even think to hurl an insult back at his dumb buddy, Barney. Geez, Pancho whispered, I'm sorry, Doc, but no way are we leaving you. We're in it for the long haul. Then, instinct reasserted itself and he jerked a hairy thumb at Barney. Except this guy, he may want to go back and make sure you don't get any hair out of place. Get that thumb, which by the way is only one evolutionary step away from being non-opposable, out of my face, you Harry. Cut it, Doc said. He was accustomed to their perpetual bickering and insult hurling, just as he had been to that of their fathers, but now was not the time. Almost 10 years ago, he had brought the two sons of his two most trusted aides, Porky Rivers and Jocko Simmons, into the fold. The sons, Banks and Van Vilar, had their stepfather's surnames, but their biological father's thirst for adventure and excitement, and had eagerly taken up their Uncle Doc's offer of adventure and intrigue, despite the risks of going up against the Nine. That Doc might finally succeed in concocting an immortality elixir that was more effective than the Nines, and that Doc would share it with them, was mere icing on the cake. Pancho Van Vilar and Barney Banks were born to adventure with Doc Caliban, elixir or no elixir. What those two schoolboys are trying to say, Doc, Trish said, is that we're all in it together, no going back. Barbara Villiers added, I'm in too. Doc nodded. I should have known better than to waste time asking. No more words were exchanged, and scant seconds later, the five were running full tilt across the ice, the metal spikes in the soles of their boots providing subtraction. The pterosaurs swooped and were engulfed in 5 streams of blue flame. Some of the leathery wings caught fire and the creatures plunged to the ground, bones cracking on impact. Others were vaporized upon direct contact with the blazing lines of fire. Nonetheless, too many teeth and claws tore at exposed faces and ripped at cold weather gear that might prove to be precious if they succeeded and escaped from Tilatok's Arctic fortress. Aim for the roof, Doc yelled. By example, he turned his flamethrower gun away from a swarm of pterosaurs and guided the spouting flame directly at the ceiling of the ice cave. His 4 teammates followed suit, all the while sprinting for the opposite end. Halfway across the ice-encrusted cavern, cracks appeared in the ceiling from which melted water began to pour in disturbing quantities. Caliban realized they would not attain their goal. Stop! As the others skidded to a halt beside Doc, he motioned them to crouch in a circle. Chunks of ice and snow slushed down upon them in a sea of white at an exponentially increasing rate. Caliban tossed a compact sphere of cloth in the middle of the circle they formed. It popped open when it hit the ground and formed a hollow sphere with a round opening in one side. The sphere's fabric was of Caliban's invention, forming an extraordinarily strong bubble in which to take shelter against burial under the falling tons of snow and ice. The 5 piled in without hesitation, and Doc closed the opening with a watertight seal. The half-slush piled on the bubble tent, buffeting in the 5 within. They felt as if they were bobbing back and forth in the sea in a violent storm, or were in a hollow ball being bounced back and forth by giant pinball flippers. They were knocked against each other's bodies and limbs, and Doc's blood from the untreated forearm wound got over everyone. Pterosaur talons sliced open one side of the bubble tent, and as the sphere collapsed and was pulled this direction and that, Barbara Villiers was sucked out of it. Barbara! Pancho Van Vilar scrambled through the tangle of bodies and went through the slit after her. Damn it, you big ape! Barney yelled as he scrambled after his friend. Doc shot out an arm to grab Banks by the ankle and haul him back inside the protection of the sphere, but missed, and Barney was gone. The melted slush ice roared down upon them in a final wave of whiteness, burying Caliban and Trish in the collapsed bubble, and also burying the flying creatures, which had been Caliban's intent. As they struggled to move and breathe under the crushing heaviness of slush, the last warmth being sucked from their aching muscles, Doc and the others heard a gruesome and mindless cry emanating in unison from the masses of buried and dying pterosaurs. Tekale-lee, 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 Tekale-lee. And that concludes the excerpt from the beginning of The Monster on Hold, Part 1, Some Unspeakable Dweller. Thank you for hanging in there for the reading. Looking forward to seeing all of you and engaging with all of you and having some nice conversations during our 2021 virtual FarmerCon 16. Scott Eckert, again, thank you. Signing off. Take care.